Welcome to a deep dive where we unpack the details from the sources you've shared. Today we're really focusing on the Sean Diddy Combs trial, specifically some key testimony that's come out.
That's right. We've got reports here from the Associated Press, People Magazine, NBC News, USA Today. They're all covering the cross-examination of a former girlfriend. She's identified in court just by the pseudonym Jane.
And our mission really is to zero in on the crucial moments from her time on the witness stand, and also how the defense handled it, to help you get a clearer picture of what's being presented. It's complex.
Definitely complex. And Jane is a really key witness for the prosecution.
Okay, so the defense attorney, Tenny Geragos, the reporting suggests he really leaned into this cross-examination. What was the main goal there? What was the strategy?
Well, from what the sources are describing, the strategy seems aimed at muddying the waters a bit, suggesting that Jane was maybe a willing participant sometimes in these alleged encounters.
Okay. To complicate her allegations.
Exactly. To sort of introduce doubt or the idea of consent, or at least a dynamic different from what the prosecution is laying out.
And a big part of that, it seems, was using her own words. The sources talk about reading text messages she sent to Combs.
Yeah, loving messages. Texts sent over several years, actually, from 2021 right up to near his arrest in September 2024.
Wow. What kind of things were in these texts?
The reporting pulled specific examples, things like Jane saying she never had a man take care of me like you do, and even professing her unending love. Pretty powerful stuff to hear read back in court.
I can only imagine. It sounds like it was really hard on her. The report said she actually broke down crying while reading them herself.
Yeah, speaks volumes about the emotional toll, doesn't it? And remember, the sources also point out she'd previously testified that she still loves Combs. But she also said that therapy gave her a new perspective. Made her feel she did things she didn't want to, these unwelcome acts, specifically to please him.
Even though she didn't want to be with anyone else.
Right. So the defense is using these texts to highlight a potential, a contradiction between how she felt then, or what she wrote then, and her testimony now.
Okay, let's dig into the details of these alleged encounters she described, these things sometimes called freak-offs. What did the sources say she testified about those?
According to the reporting on her testimony, these involved multiple men, various sexual acts. The details were pretty specific. She talked about buying things like rhino erection pills, even matching shorts for Combs, and the male escorts allegedly involved in these hotel nights.
Matching shorts.
Yeah.
Okay, and these weren't just like one-off events?
No, not according to her testimony. She described them happening sometimes weekly, lasting for hours, and requiring her to perform foreplay for, really extended periods. She actually called it really not so fun.
Hours. Weekly. That sounds absolutely exhausting. And there was that detail about a sobriety party. That sounded particularly strange.
Yes, she testified about this party lasted 12, maybe 18 hours. She said she was trying to get Combs to eat healthy, stay off drugs during it.
Okay.
But it still included a hotel night. Sure. And notably, she said this one was without drugs.
Without drugs, but she still testified she had sex with 3 men that night.
That's what she said. Her words were she unfortunately agreed to his request for that.
So a key thing here seems to be this contrast. The term freak-off sounds maybe sensational, but her testimony paints it as specific, long, and often unpleasant acts she felt she had to do.
Right. It highlights this gap she's describing between, the label or the appearance and her actual internal experience, this feeling of obligation.
It's fascinating how this fits into the bigger picture of their relationship she described. It wasn't just these encounters. There was a lot of complexity, push and pull.
Absolutely. She talked about getting angry a lot, wanting to end things, often because she felt he treated other girlfriends better.
Right, like that example. Him buying another girlfriend jewelry that matched her set. Ouch. Those kinds of things.
Yeah, little things that caused, in her telling, real pain. And she shared some really raw emotional statements, like one from October 2023 saying, I resent him for how much I loved him and couldn't say no to him. I resent him for all of it.
Wow. That really captures the internal conflict.
Deep conflict. And the reports mentioned seeing photos of Combs with the rapper Young Miami. That was painful for her.
Especially, she said, given the efforts she was making to satisfy him sexually with other men.
Yeah, but the relationship went on. The sources note she received gifts, like a Van Cleef necklace and bracelet for her birthday in 2023.
And she connected that gift directly to another alleged hotel night, didn't she?
She did. Testified she wore lingerie, greeted him with open arms, felt happy to be wrapped in his lover's arms. But when asked if the birthday celebration led to a hotel night, she confirmed it, adding, "Unfortunately, yes."
That unfortunately again.
Mm-hmm. And there's the money detail around that birthday, too. Combs sent her at least $13,000.
Which she pointed out was less than the $15,000 she'd asked for.
Right. And she acknowledged that money was for an outfit dinner with friends in L.A. The defense made a point that she was spending this while Combs was apparently with Young Miami.
Adds another layer, certainly. And what about that text message from August 2022 after an alleged encounter with Combs and a sex worker?
Yes. She texted him after that saying she was having so much fun and would never take this for granted, and that she'd make sure Combs was taken care of.
See, these are the kinds of messages the defense is seizing on, trying to paint that different picture.
Exactly. Which brings us right back to their main argument. They're essentially saying these were consensual acts between adults, not part of some criminal enterprise run by Combs.
And they even presented evidence suggesting Jane sometimes initiated these freak-offs.
Yes, she actually admitted on the stand that suggesting one specific hotel night involving her and two other men was her idea.
Her idea.
That's what she testified. And she said Combs was excited about that.
Okay. And the defense also hinted she didn't exactly leave the relationship empty-handed, mentioning designer handbags, things like that.
Right, suggesting him a material benefit, perhaps. Jane also gave her take on Combs's alleged role or mindset during these encounters, describing him as watching, directing, but maybe being, quote, too scared to do the act himself in the freak-offs. She speculated about maybe a hidden curiosity about bisexuality.
And she mentioned therapy again, seeing the dynamic potentially as a cuckold scenario.
Yeah, where a man gets aroused by his partner being with someone else. She said she just wanted to know what was driving him.
There were some other really strange details too, right? Like nicknames.
Very strange. Combs allegedly called her crack pipe. She testified that led her to suggest he go to rehab.
Crack pipe. Wow.
And she called herself Bert while he was Ernie, like from Sesame Street. She said that made her super nervous.
Bert and Ernie. Okay. Those details certainly paint a bizarre and unsettling picture.
Definitely. The defense seemed to acknowledge Combs regularly abused girlfriends, but also suggested he showed unfathomable affection.
So the defense's angle, basically, is trying to frame all this not as criminal coercion, but as a really messed up, complex relationship, with interactions that were sometimes initiated by her, sometimes maybe affectionate, even amidst the alleged abuse.
Yes, using those documented complexities, those contradictions in the messages and actions to push back against the prosecution's narrative.
Okay, let's step back for a sec. Quick trial updates from the sources. What are the specific charges again?
Right. Combs faces 5 criminal counts. There's racketeering conspiracy that's about being part of an ongoing criminal operation. Then 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, basically, making someone engage in commercial sex through those means. And 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, moving someone across state lines for that purpose. He's pleaded not guilty to everything.
Got it. And the timeline they're expecting.
Prosecution thinks they'll rest their case by next Wednesday. That's June 18th, 2025. The defense hopes the whole thing might wrap up by July 4th.
Okay. And there was something about a juror.
Yeah, a brief mention in the reports. The government tried to remove a juror, citing lack of candor. Just a procedural point that came up.
Right. Now, there was one detail that really jumped out from the reporting on Jane's testimony. Something kind of peculiar. His alleged favorite TV show is Dateline.
Yeah, that was striking, because she testified that she endured the hotel nights partly because she just wanted to spend time with him, doing normal couple things like bathing him, rubbing his feet, cuddling, and watching his favorite show.
And feeling loved through those moments.
Exactly. And Dateline, as the sources point out, it's a true crime show, often focuses on injustices, crimes by men against women, including domestic abuse, stories about ordinary people becoming victims.
The irony, or just the strangeness of that, given the context of her testimony, it's really something.
The juxtaposition is definitely notable.
Okay, so let's try to unpack all this. Hearing these details from the sources, what really stands out to you about Jane's testimony and how it's all playing out in court? It's a picture of a relationship just full of contradictions, intense emotions, all being filtered through this very rigid legal process.
Well, what's really interesting, I think, is seeing the defense strategy in action. Taking her own words, those loving texts, the time she initiated something, the gifts she accepted, and using all that to directly challenge her current claims of coercion.
Right.
while she's on the stand trying to communicate this incredibly personal, often traumatic experience she says she had within that same relationship. It's a real clash of narratives.
So what's the takeaway here? It really shines a light on just how difficult it is, legally speaking, to deal with allegations of abuse in these complex long-term relationships. The dynamics are almost never black and white from one moment to the next, right? Even if there's a clear power imbalance overall.
Exactly. And you see both sides trying to frame those complex dynamics, those gray areas, for the jury in very different ways.
Which really leads to a final question for you, the listener, to think about as you process all this information. Consider that specific odd detail about Dateline being Combs' alleged favorite show. You know, a show often about the very kinds of crimes being discussed, abuse by men against women.
What does that detail, as presented in Jane's testimony, add to your understanding of the dynamics she described? What does it make you wonder about the whole situation, the relationship as she experienced it?
Definitely something to mull over after this deep dive.